Welcome back to another patch notes video, and this is a doozy. It's a pretty big one, not gonna lie. We're gonna jump right in with the newest campaign ship that I'm going to call the Zeven. It is a Dutch Tier 7 premium cruiser, and it comes with powerful airstrike weaponry. Yeah, very interesting. It looks a little something like this. Okay, so that is a massive amount of damage, that is true, but I want to point something out about this. I don't think it's going to be as easy to use these airstrikes as it is on this poor little AI player. Okay, the first thing to take note of, 13.92 seconds. So there's about a 15-second delay from where you target and when the planes actually drop the bombs there. So any player that knows what they're doing should be able to maneuver and get out of the way of this. If it's a bow-in player, a reversing battleship player, yeah, they're going to get dumpstered as they deserve to be. But overall, I think these airstrikes will be a little bit more difficult to use. Also, this is a pretty small drop zone, so it's only going to be useful, I would say, against large capital ships. And if they happen to have good armor, better than 32 millimeters, then these will just shatter, maybe set fires. But overall, yeah, I wouldn't get too hyped up about those airstrikes just yet. We'll see how they actually perform in the game. The rest of the cruiser looks pretty mediocre, okay? You have 152 millimeter guns, only 8 of them. That's small caliber, not a fast reload, 6.5 seconds. Yeah, pretty mediocre. Good AA though. This is a post-war cruiser, as you can kind of tell by the looks of it. So the AA is good, 6 kilometers. It should have good DPS, unless it just gets nerfed when brought into our game. No torpedoes, low HP pool, not the best maneuverability. It's actually pretty slow. Here you can kind of see the HP pool is going to be down here. Unsure what the heals are like, we'll see, but most of the stats on this ship are just meh. So it's one of those things where you're probably going to have to rely on the gimmick of the airstrikes to actually perform well and do good in 7. Lots to consider about this ship, but it will be interesting. And there is a new historical Dutch commander coming to the game as well that you will get at the end of the campaign. As an inspiration, it improves damage and shell grouping against cruisers and DDs by up to 3% apiece. So that is an interesting inspiration, I suppose. Moving on, it will be the 80th anniversary of D-Day on June 6th this year, which is really crazy and hard to believe, and there's some cool things coming, including this ship in the picture here, which is the Tier 7 premium destroyer, the Haida, with a special camouflage that has the kill counter there. So that is pretty neat. There will be dedicated missions starting on May 27th to earn D-Day cards, which provide information about DD, warships, blah, 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 blah. You can collect all the cards to receive the final prize, French Tier 3 battleship Corbeil with a special D-Day camouflage. Looks like this. Gorgeous camouflage, I do have to say, although I don't see much point in having another Tier 3, but still kind of cool. Along with the collaboration, again, there will be the Tier 7 Destroyer Haida, like we talked about in her thematic permanent camouflage with a counter for defeated ships. And here is the ship. It is a tribal class destroyer, as we can see, and it sails under the Canadian flag, eh? Pretty cool. You know, the typical 120 millimeter guns that you might know and love from Brit DDs. Only one rack of 4 torps, so you're going to have to build this thing for guns and hope for the best. On PC, it has crawling smoke. Unsure if we'll get that. But yeah, this should be a new Tier 7 gunboat. It has sonar, like you would come to expect from like the Lightning or something like that. Hydroacoustic search, it's probably 3.5 kilometers. I think that is what the other Brit DDs have, but we'll see. One thing that I am concerned about, it's coming from Tier 7 on PC to our Tier 7. Historically, when Wargaming kind of up tiers a ship or puts it in at the same tier, they've been pretty weak. So we'll have to see how the Haida comes to our game. I don't know. I would just watch a review on it before you decide to purchase it. Unless you're Canadian, then just buy this thing day one, because it's probably the only Canadian ship you're ever going to get in World of Warship Legends. After that, yes, there are some other ships that are coming to the game with these new permanent camouflages, Texas, Warspite, Belfast, Bliskowisa, and the Arkansas, which are cool. There's some cool ships in there. Belfast, Warspite are very, very strong ships. Texas is a pretty good tier 4 ship, and Arkansas is fun at tier 3 as well. It has 0 AA though, so watch out for that one. And Bliskowitz, I've always enjoyed that destroyer. One fun fact about it, it has naval guns, not dual purpose guns, so the shell velocity is super high on Bliskowitz. It's a fun gunboat. Moving on, aircraft carriers have been revised, and this is going to be the big thing of this update. This includes air spotting changes, an enlarged hangar with reduced restoration times for planes, new plane fuel mechanics. I'm guessing they will run out of fuel at some point, so you can only keep them in the air so long, an increased number of bombs drop with reduced damage. So these last two parts I think I like. Look, I'm not a CV player, but these parts sound kind of cool because one of my frustrations with playing a CV is you go to use your Lexington, you go to drop bombs on a DD, and it's really heavily RNG based. It feels like it's where the bomb's gonna land. Even a perfectly aimed drop sometimes can have missed bombs. So I like the idea of, like Ark Royal, when I played that thing at tier 5 back when it launched, that was the last carrier I played, by the way, you could drop a ton of bombs and have a chance of getting hits. And that made it more fun to me. So that part is cool. And I think the fuel mechanic seems interesting. Now, the air spotting changes, I have been sworn to secrecy. Of course, this video, if you're watching it, it was recorded yesterday. I'm not allowed to talk about the air spotting changes until the Ministry of Balance article drops today. So as soon as the Ministry of Balance article drops, I will pin it in the first comment down below and we can talk about the changes. Let's just say they're huge. This changes everything about CVs, and let's move on so I don't spill the beans. To test out the new mechanics for yourself, you can rent aircraft carriers, some of the LT carriers. That sounds like a good idea, just to let people rent the highest carriers in the game. But hey, it's fine. It's fine. They're in the bureau anyways. This is a tier 5 IJN carrier, and then the Graf Zeppelin, of course. One thing to note, you won't be able to buy any aircraft carriers, any premium aircraft carriers from the store during the duration of this update, which is fine because you probably want to see how this goes and what Wargaming decides to do after the update, you know, following the performance of the ships and of course your feedback. So yeah, just one thing to note there. But I would definitely recommend renting them to try them out. Of course, I will have to test the CVs. I'm not a carrier player, but yes, I will test this for you guys and we'll try to get a video out on the changes. Also, just spitballing here, renting ships in the game. I think it's a really cool feature. Yes, maybe legendary tier ships, I don't know, that's a little bit scary that anybody could just pop in and rent them. But I would like to see more of this. Let people rent premium ships before they buy them rather than just watching a YouTube video. You know, you get more silver spent in the game. People get to try out new things. Is this that hard to implement? I don't know. Renting seems cool. And also here, me, Derka, just talking to you. Feedback. Man, when I read feedback on Facebook and Discord, somewhere there must be an unwritten rule that you have to be a complete jackass. I don't know. Would it be so hard to leave some positive feedback or something that's just not so scathing and terrible to read? I don't know. Just food for thought. Moving on, another event. And I could almost say that I care less, but currently I'm watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV. And I don't know, European football, I'm kind of interested now, at least because of Ted Lasso. So there's a little collaboration going on there that they will release an article that you can get more information about it. Warhammer 40K is coming back. And this is actually a pretty good collaboration in terms of the commanders. But first, we'll talk about the balance changes. They're buffing both of these BBs, which have been very, very mediocre as far as I'm concerned, and I wouldn't spend the money on them. But let's pay attention and see what the buffs are. As for the other ships in this collaboration, I don't know that they're really worth picking up. You have a York class cruiser at tier 6. A premium York that you give up the sonar for a speed boost consumable, so you can have a super fast brawler that is kind of cool, but you're giving up the awesome German sonar. And the other Warhammer ship at tier 6 is called Ship Smasher, and I think it is a Jervis with heals basically, but what you give up is gun range. You can see here 9.1 kilometers, and the torpedoes are only 6 km. Overall, this feels like a knee-capped ship to me, and I would much rather have the OG Jervis with its sonar as well. I believe this smoke on Ship Smasher is a little bit longer duration as well, but yeah, I would ignore the Warhammer 40k ships and go straight for the commanders. Now there are buffs for Arthas the Cold, which is interesting because I always considered that a strong commander, and there's a buff for Justinian Lions. And let's talk about this. I've largely considered Justinian Lions to be a little bit OP when you use him for the secondary fire build that I've used on this channel for years now. Basically, what you're doing is every time you pop a heal, you're using Justinian Lions' base trait to increase your fire percentage astronomically, and you get tons of fires. It's not unusual to pop one heal and to get 5 or 6 fires on basically any ship in range. So I am curious how this buff is going to go, but this would be a commander worth looking out for. The other commanders, Augustine Reigerwald has a fantastic base trait that you could use on a lot of your cruisers, and Kraken Shells is a very, very good skill, and it's in slot 2, so it's easy to max out. 5% on the speed, I believe, plus increased AP shell penetration. So those commanders are really good on the Warhammer 40k collaboration. And of course, I cannot not talk about Grot Maz, who has a really silly base trait, but what it does have is 2 perks to increase fire damage down here, so you could buff your Brit DD fire percentage by 5%. So this on Daring, it's basically a fire breather, and I don't know, it's an interesting commander worth looking into. Again, I think the commanders are some of the best thing you could spend your money on in this game because you get a lot of use out of it. You can use it on lots of ships, lots of inspirations, so on and so forth. It is probably the best bang for your buck. People call me a ship salesman. Now, actually, I'm a commander salesman. And on that note, let's go on to the Transformers content. There are a lot of unique skins here for the Grosser Kurfürst, the Montana, the Gearing, the Khabarovsk, the Minotaur. I think the skins are, of course, a waste of money. They do look cool, but you could spend the same amount to get commanders that, again, could be pretty neat. For the Americans, there is Optimus Prime, which I have never used a single time. There are too many good American BB commanders. I would probably skip this one. There is also Bumblebee, which increased your engine boost duration. Interesting. I suppose it's an American gunboat commander. Never used him as well. For the Brits, we have Autobot Hot Rod, which has some interesting buffs to radar. Cooldown time decreased and duration increased. An interesting build. You could use it on Minotaur or something like that. I don't know. Decent. For the Germans, Decepticon Megatron, which has the base trait to increase battleship main battery range, which could be a useful inspiration, I suppose, for some of your builds. And Decepticon Starscream, which could give you the fastest aircraft in the game. I would probably wait on buying a CV commander until you see how the CV rework goes. Moving on, we have Dinobot Grimlock for the French. This is a hard pass from me. Enhanced secondary targeting cooldown time, and then you have this sharpshooter, which is going to increase your main battery shell grouping while enhanced secondary targeting is active. I mean, that's pretty big, a 20% buff, but you're giving up Megalomania in skill slot 3, so I've always passed on this commander. I don't know that I've really seen anybody using it, but I would be curious to see what a 20% shell grouping buff looks like. I don't know, might have to go test that one out. For the Soviets, this would be the commander I would put at the top of my list, Rumble, because he increases your destroyer main battery range. This is one of the most useful inspirations you could use on a gunboat. It's great for ships like the Schultz, the Elbing, the Khabarovsk, the Tashkent, the Delny. So many ships could use this, gunboat ships, Friesland, I suppose. It's just a good commander, and it's good to buff your DD range. And finally, Soundwave, which is a commander I've largely forgotten about, if that tells you anything. The 3% buff to rudder shift is nice. Other than that, though, the smoke cannon, increasing your smokescreen deployment time on a Malfi, it adds about 1.5 seconds. So to me, not really worth it. But you could definitely check out those commanders in the collaboration. Again, they are the best bang for your buck. New Brawl seasons, including the one that I actually like, where you have cruisers and they have boosted stats, including damage and movement speed. That one's usually kind of fun because it feels more skilled to me. If you're a good cruiser commander and you're good at brawling, it's kind of fun. Fleet battles return for console players, so that's cool if you're into that sort of thing. And a few various improvements and bug fixes. Again, the Ministry of Balance article was not out at the time of recording this, so I will post that up in the comment section and we can talk about the CV changes there a little bit later. But yeah, let me know what you guys think overall of this update. I would be curious to hear. I'm especially curious to hear how you guys feel about the new aircraft carrier spotting mechanics, because it is huge. Anyways, leave me a comment and I will see you guys in the next one.